Snow drifted gently over Suzhou, painting the old city white. Inside the Li family courtyard, lanterns glowed like floating embers, and the scent of ink and silk mingled in the winter air. Li Hao stood at her window, her black wavy hair loose over a pale blue robe. Her eyes were dark and steady, yet the faint tremble of her hands betrayed the storm inside her heart. She had always been graceful and clever, but tonight she felt like a shadow of herself. Her father had been accused of smuggling imperial silk, a crime punishable by death, and she alone could save him. The Li residence was rich in wooden beams and carved windows, yet it felt like a prison. Snow clung to the lattices, plum blossoms bent under frost. Lisha pressed her palm against the cold wood. "I must go to Beijing," she whispered. Her breath made a faint cloud on the glass. She changed into the clothes of a young scholar. Layered robes of muted grey and pale cream, and bound her black hair loosely under a simple hat. In the dim light she looked like an ethereal boy, slim and composed, but her eyes, long-lashed and black as ink, gave her away to anyone who knew her well. Snow clung to Li, shoes cloak, as her horse's hooves struck the frozen stones of a narrow Beijing alley. She swung one slender leg over the saddle and stepped down, her boots crunching on ice. The city smelled of pine smoke and roasted chestnuts. She led the horse to a post, tied the reins, and pushed open the door of a modest ink shop whose lantern glowed faintly through the snow. Inside it was warm and dim, the air thick with the scent of paper and soot. Removing her gloves, she sat at a low wooden table. Her black wavy hair slipped from its pins as she unrolled a blank sheet. In the soft light she began to write a letter in fine brush strokes. A hidden message to be passed to her allies, her breath slow and visible, in the cold room. When she finished, she sealed it quickly, tucked it into her sleeve, and rose without a word, ready to continue toward the forbidden city. 2 weeks later, the capital rose before her like a vision carved from jade and gold. Beijing's gates towered, its roof shimmering under a dusting of snow. The forbidden city loomed behind crimson walls, where the emperor and his court plotted the future of millions. Li Shui's boots crunched on icy cobblestones as she slipped through side streets, following whispered directions. In her sleeve, a secret scroll, evidence that could clear her father's name, pressed against her palm. She murmured a prayer as snowflakes melted on her lips. Zhao Rui watched her from the shadow of an archway. Tall, calm, and dangerous, he wore a deep green Hanfu with gold embroidery, and his long white hair, tied at the nape with a jade clasp, gleamed like frozen moonlight. His eyes were a pale silver grey, unreadable and soft at once. Born of noble blood, raised in the palace as a strategist, Zhao Rui had spent his life navigating the treacheries of the imperial court. He had seen countless faces, greedy, frightened, ambitious. But this young scholar, walking alone through the snow, was unlike any other. Inside the palace, candlelight flickered over lacquered screens and dragon carvings. Li Shuk moved with practiced calm, searching for the chamber of records. Her heart beat hard beneath her scholar robes. She slipped into a side hall lined with scrolls. There, as if appearing from the shadows themselves, Zhao Rui stepped forward. The long sleeves of his robe brushed the polished floor. He blocked her path without unsheathing a weapon, his eyes fixed on hers. "You do not belong here," he said quietly. Li Shu raised her chin. "And yet here I stand." Her voice trembled, but held steady at the end. For a moment they stared at each other, snowflakes melting on their shoulders, where the night wind had followed them inside. Zhao Rui studied her face, the curve of her mouth, the glint of her eyes. He knew the look of someone desperate and fearless at once. He lowered his gaze. "You're risking everything." "I already have," she replied. Instead of raising an alarm, Jia Rui reached for a lantern and held it between them, its glow softening the cold air. "Come with me. This hall is not safe." They moved through hidden corridors, past carved dragons and frozen courtyards. The night smelled of pine and candle wax. As they walked, she sensed he was not like the others. His presence steadied her. His long white hair trailed like silk behind him. And when he turned to look at her, his eyes were not the eyes of an enemy. Over the next days, they met in secret, in dim libraries and frost-rimmed gardens, under bridges where koi moved slowly beneath ice. They exchanged whispers. She told him of her father's false charges. He told her of the factions tearing the court apart. Their hands brushed once, a brief touch like a spark under snow. In those moments, the vast world of palaces and prisons shrank to the space between them. At the Red Plum Blossom Festival, when the Imperial Gardens opened and crimson petals fell into white snow, she sat cross-legged on the veranda, brush in hand, painting the crimson trees that lined the palace courtyard. Petals drifted across her paper like living ink, and she caught their shape with every careful stroke. Behind her, he appeared silently, the young man in his dark, official robes, pausing to watch her, eyes lingering on the delicate movement of her wrist and the scene, blooming on the parchment. A sudden hiss of air broke the stillness. Figures in black vaulted over the railing, blades flashing. Before she could react, he had already drawn his sword, steel ringing as it met theirs. "Stay behind me," he commanded, parrying and striking in a single breath. With one arm, he caught her hand, pulling her through a concealed side door, into a narrow private chamber. In the rush, her hairpin slipped and fell, strands spilling down her back. He stopped just long enough to glance at her, startled by the sight, before swinging the door shut behind them and locking the world outside. That night, under the falling blossoms, he confessed he had known from the start she was no scholar but a girl, risking her life for her family. "I should be furious," he said softly, "but instead I find myself praying for your safety." Li Ya smiled faintly, snow dusting her black hair. "And I never thought I would trust a man from the palace." The great hall of the palace stretched out before her, pillars carved with dragons, and cranes rising up to a ceiling of gold. The emperor sat high upon his throne. The court bowed low in a shimmering sea of silk and armor. She stepped into the vast chamber, wearing only a simple white silk Hanfu. Hands trembling, eyes downcast. Her footsteps echoed against the stone floor as she approached, heart pounding beneath the weight of so many eyes. Behind her, the young man appeared, calm and steady, stepping to her side like a shadow. His presence wrapped around her like a silent promise. He reached into his sleeve and unfolded the painting she had, made of the crimson courtyard. The colors spilled open like fire and spring blossoms, and a murmur swept through the hall, the ministers and guards stunned by the beauty and audacity of it. A man in black stormed forward from the crowd, voice rising in accusation. She lowered her head, bowing deeply, and handed him a sealed letter with both hands, before the man could snatch it. From the far end of the hall, her father's guards entered, followed by the emperor himself, stepping down from the dais. The tension snapped like a cord. The man in black fell silent, retreating. The young man bent slightly, lifting her by the arm. Petals fall. he murmured, so only she could hear. Yet destiny meets itself. His words steadied her trembling heart. The emperor paused before them, gaze softening. After a breath, he smiled and nodded. In that moment, the hall erupted, not with anger, but with applause and relief. Her father stepped forward, and for the first time in years, embraced her. The young man's hand found hers, not as a guard or stranger, but as an equal. Outside the tall doors, spring winds carried crimson petals through the courtyard, and together they walked toward the future, their fates no longer bound by fear, but joined by choice. Within a week, Zhao Rui's maneuvering cleared her father's name. The charges vanished like frost under the morning sun,